It's July 5th, 2025, and Tropical Storm Chantal has formed off of the southeastern coast of the United States. This is it in its current state, and it's very clearly going under a period of organization, and it also appears to be growing in size. Now, this period from now until the nightfall today is going to be the most critical for this storm's development. We will really find out how strong it will get to be before it starts interacting with land and starts falling apart. Here's the cone of uncertainty for Tropical Storm Chantal, and it appears that it will make landfall 8 a.m. on Sunday in the northeastern part of South Carolina, and we can see that it has developed a decently large wind field of tropical storm winds, which is only expected to increase. These tropical storm force winds could arrive as early as today at 8 p.m. along the coast, with a more likely time around early morning Sunday at 2 in the morning. Because it's only a weak storm, not large surge is expected. It's only expected to be about 1 to 3 feet, but it is going to be a pretty widespread area going from Edisto Beach all the way up to Surf City, North Carolina, with the greatest area surge starting in South Santee Beach and going all the way up into Surf City, North Carolina. Rip currents are also going to be a big issue on the southeastern coast of the United States associated with this storm, so if you're planning on going in the ocean, exercise extreme caution. And there's going to be a widespread small risk of flash flooding associated with the storm, starting in Charleston and extending all the way up into Norfolk, Virginia, with the greatest area of expected flash flooding being actually pretty isolated, starting in the northeastern corner of South Carolina and extending all the way up into Wilmington, North Carolina. And the GFS is actually predicting a pretty isolated area, which could see anywhere from 2 to 5 inches of rain in the northeastern border of South Carolina. Another interesting thing is that Tropical Storm Chantal could foster a small tornado risk along the coast of the Carolinas. And on simulated reflectivity here, we can see that around late afternoon today, we could see a couple of small cells along our main risk area, and the shear around nightfall when the low level jet starts to kick in will actually be conducive for possibly a spin-up tornado with a couple of these isolated cells. For example, here's a weather sounding from the area, and we can see that our lowest cloud level is going to be definitely low enough to support a tornado threat, and our shear is going to be pretty favorable. We're going to have 20 knots of low-level shear, and we're going to have nearing 100 low-level SRH, so definitely a tornado could be possible with a couple of these storms associated with Tropical Storm Chantal tonight. Now, the spaghetti models have pretty much zeroed in on a northeastern South Carolina landfall, with Chantal then tracking through parts of eastern North Carolina as a tropical depression before it re-enters the Atlantic. Additionally, all of our intensity models have pretty much agreed that Chantal will not really be any stronger than a weak tropical storm. And the things fueling Chantal are going to be the warm sea surface temperatures out here in the Atlantic. These are going to be very conducive for the organization and strengthening of Tropical Storm Chantal. Another thing is that the ocean heat content right in the area where Chantal is currently situated in is also going to be very conducive for strengthening an organization. Now, there are going to be two things hindering Chantal's development, and that is going to be the interaction of some dry air with a storm. We can see that some dry air is going to get sucked up into Chantal, which would definitely weaken it. So although the immediate air mass around Chantal is pretty moist, it is going to be battling some drier air as it gets closer to landfall. And then Chantal is also going to be battling a pretty formidable area of strong shear, which is not going to be conducive to the organization of this storm. So that is another reason why it's not really expected to get extremely organized and is only expected to stay a weak tropical storm as it makes landfall in the Carolinas. And an update on our severe weather risk today up here in the Northern Plains, the SPC is actually going ahead and outlined a enhanced risk. And everything is going to stay the same except there is a enhanced area of expected winds, which could reach up to 85-mile-an-hour wind gust in the southeastern corner of Montana and the far northeastern corner of Wyoming. And there also has been an area that has been hatched for our hail risk, so increased probabilities of hail out here in southeastern Montana. Another unfortunate thing that is slated to continue is our strong risk of flash flooding out here in Texas. Here is the rainfall accumulation for this area, and it appears that as it's all said and done today, there could be a lot of isolated areas which could see up to 5 inches in rain. And of course, we have our other risk of severe weather. You can check out yesterday's video to see more on that, and that will be linked in the description and a pinned comment in the comment section. And there will also be widespread thunderstorms and of course our area of potential tornadoes out here associated with Tropical Storm Chantal. A look at our simulated reflectivity from our Northern Plains risk area reveals that we could see a couple of discrete supercells out here around the early afternoon, which would be cause for that hail threat. And then these are going to be fueled by a low pressure system, a cold front, and then another stationary front, and then also a lot of conducive troughing and flow, which will help to organize these storms. So right here is going to be our corridor for all hazards of severe weather, including winds up to 85 miles an hour, some tornadoes, and possibly some hail around 2 inches in diameter. But it looks like during the evening, this will transform into pretty much a strong line of storms, and that is when our wind threat is expected to peak with this activity. And it looks like there could be a round 2 of storms, which would be actually pretty unfortunate for our folks out here in southeastern Montana, which could bring that threat for all hazards of severe weather yet again. Moving down to our central and southern plains risk area, we could actually see another area of some intense winds, with one cluster of storms developing out here in western Kansas, which would pose that threat for some intense winds. Then another cluster, which is expected to develop down here in parts of eastern New Mexico and the Texas Panhandle. These are going to be fueled by a cold front intersecting our high plains convergence zone and a pretty strong dry line and low pressure system down here near the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle. Here's a weather sounding from our storms up in the northern plains, and we can see that we're going to have a fairly straight hodograph. And also we're going to have some very strong bulk shear, which is going to be fueling that main threat for these storms today. Because they're going to be so organized, they will be able to possibly produce that all hazards risk. However, our low level helicity and low level shear is going to be fairly low, but because these storms will have some discrete nature and it is going to be along a boundary, that possibility of a tornado is not zero. Another thing that's going to make that possibility of a tornado not zero is our lowest cloud level being near that 1 kilometer threshold. And there will be some veering in the winds, which will help to organize our storms. We do have a decent bit of cape near our freezing level. And then we do have nearing 8 Celsius decreasing per kilometer mid-level lapse rates, which would fuel that threat for hail, as long as that chance of some discrete supercells in the early stages of our storm mode could hold true. We also have some very favorable mixing, which would support that threat for severe winds with a lot of dry air aloft. Then our dew point is going to be enough in this region to support all threats of severe weather as well. We also have a cape nearing 3,000 joules per kilogram, so definitely juiced up enough. Then our downdraft cape is going to be 1,100. So even though our precipitable water is not going to be super high, that will help to support that threat for severe winds. And then our relative humidity is not going to be very high. It's going to be around 50%, if not lower than 50%, which would increase that threat of severe winds with some evaporative cooling. So in summary, I definitely think all hazards of severe weather are going to be possible out here in the northern plains in southeast Montana and northeastern Wyoming, with the main threat being strong severe gusts up to 85 miles an hour. And then here's a weather sounding from our central and southern plains risk area, which I definitely think has uptrended since last night. We're going to have some fairly straight hodographs with actually more bulk shear than was expected a couple of hours ago at 30 knots. So these storms will possibly be able to organize. And our lowest cloud level is going to be a bit high, which would support that threat for some strong severe winds. And then our veering in our winds is going to also help to support that chance of storms becoming organized. We also have a decent bit of cape near our freezing layer, and our lapse rates are going to be 8.4 Celsius decrease per kilometer. So although our freezing layer is going to be pretty high, I definitely do think the threat of some hail over 1 inch in diameter could be possible out here in the central and southern plains with those storms in their early portions of their life before they turn into a line. Then our atmosphere is also going to be quite juiced up, nearing 3,400 cape. And then our precipitable water is going to be 1.23 inches, and that's going to be coupled with a downdraft cape nearing 1,600, which would support that threat for severe winds. And then once again, our relative humidity is not going to be super high at 50% or lower, which would also help support that threat of severe winds with evaporative cooling. So I definitely think some severe winds down here in the central and southern plains are possible at over 70 miles an hour. And I also do think there could be the isolated threat for some large hail.